Welcome back to PoliticallyX.
Glad to be here for another one.
So I want you, the listener, to imagine something for a second. Imagine setting up this automatic, completely uncancelable joint bank account with a friend.
Okay, sounds like a terrible idea already.
Right. You agree to put money in every single month, but the bank that's managing this account, well, they have famously lost track of everyone's money for like 8 years straight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And when you ask the bank for a receipt or, just a basic balance statement, the manager just shrugs.
So it's a shrug.
Just says, whoopsie, we lost the ledger, and they face absolutely zero consequences for it.
I mean, no one in their right mind would ever agree to those terms.
Exactly, you would never do that. Yet today, we are looking at this massive claim that the United States government is doing exactly that, but with our national defense.
Which is wild.
And effectively, locking the American taxpayer completely out of the transaction.
Yeah. And for you, our listener, we are embarking on a deep dive today into a really intense, highly specific political argument.
Very intense.
It's all about the future of the U.S. military, the nature of our global alliances, and really just the foundational concept of national sovereignty.
So our primary source for this deep dive is this recent video from a YouTube channel called Valhalla VFT. And the title of the video is, in all caps, "This is treason."
Subtle.
Yeah, very subtle. But we are going to be looking at a highly specific piece of legislation that's currently moving through Congress, and we're looking at it strictly through the lens of this video.
Right.
But before we go any further, I really need to make something crystal clear to you, the listener.
Absolutely.
In this deep dive, we are exploring a very specific America First independent perspective that this creator presents.
We are just the messengers here.
Exactly. We are impartially reporting on this politically charged content. We are not taking a side at all.
Nope.
And we are absolutely not endorsing the viewpoints or the pretty heavy rhetoric of the original source material.
Right. Our job today is literally just to convey these ideas and arguments clearly to you.
So you can understand the actual mechanics of what's being claimed here.
And why it's setting off such massive alarm bells in, certain political circles.
Okay, let's unpack this. To understand the absolute panic in this source video, we really have to look at the specific legislation at the center of all this controversy.
The NDAA.
Yes, the National Defense Authorization Act, but specifically a piece of it called Section 219.
Right.
According to Valhalla VFT, this section basically aims to permanently merge American military technology and our supply chains with the IDF, the Israeli military.
And just for some context for you guys listening, the NDAA is this massive annual bill that funds the entire United States military.
It's huge.
It is. And because it's categorized as like a must-pass piece of legislation, meaning the government basically stops working if it doesn't pass,
Right.
it frequently becomes this sort of vehicle for these huge structural policy changes.
Things that would never survive on their own.
Exactly. Things that would definitely not survive scrutiny if they were introduced as like standalone bills.
Mm-hmm. Right, so they just bury it in the NDA.
Exactly. And what the video really highlights is this surprisingly bipartisan effort to actually block Section 219 from making it into the final version of this year's bill.
Yeah, the creator points out that Congressman Thomas Massie, who is this staunch, conservative Republican,
Right.
and Congressman Ro Khanna, who is a very progressive Democrat, they actually joined forces to try and stop this integration.
Which you do not see every day.
No, you really don't. But their attempt was completely blocked before it could even reach the floor for a debate.
Yeah, the video notes that the House Rules Committee basically denied a vote on Massey's amendment. His amendment would have stripped Section 219 completely out of the bill.
And for the listener who, doesn't live in the weeds of C-SPAN every day, the Rules Committee is basically the bouncer at the Club of Congress.
That is a perfect way to put it.
Right. They get to determine which amendments are even allowed to be debated or voted on by the full House.
Yeah, if the Rules Committee doesn't let your amendment through the door, it just dies in the hallway.
Exactly.
So by blocking Massey's amendment, the committee effectively ensured that Section 219 would just stay buried inside this larger, multi-thousand-page defense bill.
Without anyone ever having to take a direct yes or no vote on it.
Right.
And Massey was furious. He essentially came out and vowed to vote no on the entire NDAA just because of this.
Wow.
He actually stated that our founding fathers would be appalled.
And Khanna was out there, too, warning that this is a direct threat to American sovereignty.
Yeah, he specifically highlighted the immense danger of what he called co-producing weapons.
Which brings us to the very heavy framing in the source material.
Oh, yeah.
The video's creator, and the really echoing rhetoric from commentators like Tucker Carlson here, explicitly labels this integration as treason.
And sedition. They use both words.
Right. They argue that the Constitution simply does not authorize merging our military with a foreign country.
Oh, wait, I really have to push back here for a second because isn't co-production kind of just standard?
In what way?
Like, the U.S. shares supply chains with NATO allies literally all the time.
That's true.
F-35 fighter jet parts are manufactured all over the world by our various partner nations. So why does this specific creator view Section 219 as literal treason rather than just, standard modern military cooperation?
Well, so that is exactly the pivotal ideological divide here.
Okay.
From the perspective of standard modern diplomacy, you are 100% correct. Allied supply chains are highly integrated right now.
Right, it's very normal.
But the America First perspective that this source presents, it draws this really hard line between purchasing from your allies and structurally merging with them.
Oh, I see.
They argue that Section 219 goes way, way beyond typical procurement.
So it's not just buying parts.
No, it's less like buying a car from an ally and more like building a single car together where they make the engine and we make the transmission.
Okay, that makes sense.
And if you ever have a diplomatic falling out, you don't just lose an ally. You're left with a transmission that literally can't drive anywhere.
Wow. So you're basically paralyzed.
Exactly. You literally cannot build or deploy your own weapons independently anymore.
So the whole argument is that this level of integration physically removes our option of independent action.
Yes.
Like, if American foreign policy ever diverges from this allies policy 20 years from now, the U.S. military might find its own readiness totally paralyzed because our critical defense components are just legally and physically locked up in a shared production line.
And that is the absolute core of their sovereignty argument. To this creator, sovereignty isn't just about having borders on a map.
Right.
It's about having the unrestricted mechanical capability to defend those borders and to project power without needing another nation's permission.
Or needing their manufacturing infrastructure.
Yeah, exactly. They view this permanent entanglement of the defense industrial base as a total surrender of that ultimate independent authority.
Which is why they invoke words like treason.
Exactly.
Okay, so if this structural entanglement is really that profound, the immediate question I have is, how does this completely bypass public debate?
Yeah, that's a multi-billion-dollar question.
According to the source, embedding this into the NDAA is absolutely not an accident. It's a highly deliberate tactic to avoid financial oversight.
Right.
They argue that by sliding this integration into the broader Pentagon budget, Congress is basically creating this massive dark pool for foreign military aid.
Yeah, the source really moves from the mechanical issue of supply chains to the systemic issue of financial transparency.
Which is huge.
Because if military integration with a foreign power is funded through, like, a standard standalone foreign aid bill, well, Congress has to vote on that individually.
Everyone sees it.
Right. The public can see exactly how many billions are being sent overseas, and voters can actually hold their representatives accountable for those specific votes.
But if you make it a permanent integrated part of the Pentagon's baseline budget through something like Section 219,
Congress never has to hold a standalone vote on sending that money ever again.
And the source brings up a statistic here that honestly completely changes the context of this funding for me.
The audits.
The audits. The Pentagon has failed 8 consecutive audits.
It's crazy.
Since 2018, the Department of Defense hasn't passed a single one.
And what's fascinating here is how the creator connects that mechanism of a failed audit to a deliberate strategy of obfuscation.
Like, it's on purpose.
Yeah, because an audit failure at the Pentagon doesn't just mean, like, Carl in accounting lost a folder of receipts.
Right. It's way worse.
The Department of Defense operates on hundreds of different, totally outdated legacy accounting systems. We're talking systems dating back to the 1970s and 80s.
That's terrifying.
And these systems literally cannot communicate with one another. So tracking a dollar from a congressional appropriation down to a specific nut or bolt on an assembly line is, in a lot of cases, just a structural impossibility.
Which brings us right back to that joint bank account analogy we started with.
Exactly.
The source argues that this isn't just bureaucratic incompetence. They're outright claiming that by legally intertwining foreign military aid with this famously unauditable baseline Pentagon budget,
They're hiding it.
yes, the government is deliberately shielding this money from voter scrutiny, like forever.
It basically creates a self-sustaining financial loop that is completely insulated from any kind of democratic accountability.
If the voters can't see the money moving, they can't object to it.
The assertion is that the lack of transparency is a feature. It is not a bug.
Wow.
By burying the funding inside an institution that legally, physically cannot count for its own assets, the financial reality of this integration just becomes functionally invisible to the American taxpayer.
Okay, but a shared budget is one thing, right? Shared secrets are another entirely.
Oh, absolutely.
The video argues that this financial merger is basically just a Trojan horse for an intelligence and technology merger, which they view as a way, way greater risk.
Yeah, the intelligence component raises some really profound domestic and strategic concerns within this America First framework.
Because it's giving a foreign nation access to our stuff.
Exactly. The source claims this merger will give a foreign nation direct access to the American government's highly classified intelligence apparatus.
And the creator specifically frames this as a huge domestic privacy issue.
Yes.
They suggest that the vast amount of information the U.S. government has collected on its own citizens, I mean, the entire domestic surveillance network.
Which is massive.
Right. That it could essentially become completely accessible to our greatest ally through this data sharing merger.
And you have to understand, the boundary between domestic U.S. intelligence and foreign allied intelligence is historically guarded with extreme prejudice.
Do not mix.
They are not supposed to.
Yeah.
Methods of data collection, cyber capabilities, signals intelligence, these represent the absolute crown jewels of our national security.
And the source argues that merging these systems creates this porous border.
Right, a border where foreign intelligence services can basically just peer into the American apparatus.
Fundamentally compromising the privacy of U.S. citizens.
Without any constitutional oversight whatsoever.
And it goes even further than just current intelligence, right? It extends into the future of military research and development.
The R&D aspect.
Yeah, the creator outlines a deeply cynical view of the long-term strategic risks here.
Rightfully so, from their perspective.
They voice this huge fear that by opening up our highest level R&D, we're essentially exposing our most valuable defense secrets to outright theft or unauthorized sharing or reverse engineering.
The geopolitical anxiety presented here is really that classic fear of accidentally arming your future adversary.
Yes.
The foundation of modern American military doctrine relies almost entirely on maintaining absolute technological superiority.
You have to have the best stuff.
Exactly. If a nation willingly compromises its proprietary tech for the sake of an alliance today, the argument is that they are actively gambling with the strategic dominance required for tomorrow.
And they take it a step further in the video, specifically naming Russia as this ultimate nightmare scenario.
Right.
The creator paints this picture where the U.S. shares its top-tier R&D with an ally, and then that ally acting in its own sovereign interest, doing what's best for them.
As countries do.
Right. That ally eventually turns around and shares or sells that technology to a nation like Russia.
Which is a terrifying thought.
It is, because decades down the line, the United States military could theoretically find itself in a conflict where it has to fight against its own advanced weaponry.
Yeah.
But wait, I really need to clarify a vital distinction the creator makes here just to fully understand this America First perspective.
Go ahead.
They are extremely explicit that their outrage is not exclusively an issue with Israel.
That's a very important point.
They state point blank they do not care what country it is. They argue the U.S. has absolutely no business merging its military and intelligence apparatuses with any foreign country, period.
And that right there is the defining ideological pillar of the America First movement.
No exceptions.
None.
Yeah.
It views all permanent foreign entanglements with really deep suspicion, regardless of how friendly or culturally aligned the partner nation currently appears to be.
Yeah, the video literally lists them out. Britain, Australia, Japan, Canada. And they actually point to the historical irony of Britain to make their point, which I thought was super
It's
interesting.
a great example.
They argue that, hey, Britain is our closest ally right now, that's right, but we fought a literal revolutionary war against them to gain our independence in the first place.
Exactly.
The core argument is that over a 40 or 50-year horizon, alliances are fragile. They are completely unpredictable.
You simply cannot predict who your friends and enemies will be half a century from now.
It's impossible.
And this connects directly back to the very foundation of American foreign policy, specifically George Washington's farewell address.
Where he explicitly warned against permanent entangling alliances.
Exactly. The creator is operating from a purely realist view of international relations. Today's indispensable ally can so easily become tomorrow's fierce competitor.
Right.
So by integrating supply chains, R&D, and intelligence to the point where they just cannot be cleanly severed, the argument is that the United States is voluntarily surrendering the strategic agility it needs to survive in an unpredictable world.
Okay, so with claims of actual treason, unaccountable billions of dollars, compromised top-secret R&D, and the permanent surrender of our sovereignty being debated on the floor of Congress.
It sounds like front-page news.
The natural assumption is that this would absolutely dominate the news cycle.
Right.
Whether you think Section 219 is brilliant diplomacy or a catastrophic mistake, you would assume everyone would be talking about it.
But they're not.
The source points out a deafening silence.
Yeah, the media and algorithmic suppression angle is the final piece of their argument here, and it really speaks to how information is controlled in the modern era.
It's crazy.
The creator observes that the major mainstream networks, and they specifically name Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC, are completely and uniformly silent on the implications of Section 219.
And to prove just how deep this blackout actually goes, the creator decides to run a real-world test on social media.
This part was fascinating.
It really was. They open up X, formerly Twitter, and they create a brand new, completely blank account.
A fresh slate.
Right. Their goal is just to see what the algorithm naturally pushes to a standard user on a day when, according to their perspective at least, one of the most consequential votes in modern history is happening in Washington.
And the results of that test provide a pretty mechanical explanation for why the public remains so unaware of complex legislative maneuvers.
It's a barrage of what the creator literally calls slop.
Slop, yeah.
Instead of anything related to the NDAA or military integration or national sovereignty, the blank feed is immediately flooded with Andrew Tate content.
Of course.
It pushes bizarre conspiracy theories about Trump body doubles.
Naturally.
It is just endless algorithmic junk food. There is not a single post, news article, or mention of this massive defense shift happening in Congress.
And if we connect this to the bigger picture, it highlights a profound vulnerability in how democratic societies process information today.
What do you mean?
Well, we tend to think of suppression as active censorship, right? Like someone deliberately deleting a post or banning a user.
Right, like an active silencer.
Exactly. But this creator is pointing out a far more effective form of suppression, which is distraction.
Wow.
If the algorithms that control the modern public square are tuned to just prioritize outrage bait, celebrity drama, and absurd conspiracies over dry, complex legislative text.
Then monumental shifts in national policy can happen entirely in the open.
Yep, in the open, yet completely in the dark.
And the creator actually juxtaposes this reality with a quote from Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene.
What did she say?
Well, apparently she stated that this upcoming NDAA vote would, quote, list every member of Congress who betrayed America.
Okay.
But the creator points out the really bitter irony of that statement. They argue that, yes, the vote will technically be on the public record, but functionally it doesn't even matter.
Because nobody knows.
Exactly. The regular American masses have absolutely no idea this debate is even happening. The algorithm basically ensures that they are too distracted by body double conspiracies to ever notice the ledger.
And that suggests a terrifying disconnect between the actions of the state and the awareness of the citizenry.
Yeah, it really does.
If the architecture of our media and our social networks actively prevents the public from even realizing a foundational debate exists, I mean, democratic accountability becomes practically impossible.
So what does this all mean? Let's try to bring all these threads together.
Okay.
Today, we've walked through the America First independent perspective presented by this creator regarding Section 219 of the NDAA.
We explored their claim that this legislation represents a stealth, structural integration of U.S. and Israeli military technology and supply chains.
Which they view as a permanent and treasonous surrender of independent American sovereignty.
Right. We also looked at the argument that this integration is intentionally being hidden within a Pentagon budget that has failed 8 consecutive audits.
Systematically destroying financial transparency and voter oversight.
Exactly. And we examined the deep concerns regarding domestic privacy and the long-term strategic nightmare of exposing our top-tier R&D to a world where alliances, inevitably shift.
And finally, we discussed the mechanics of modern suppression. That alarming media and algorithmic blackout that just floods the zone with junk food to keep voters entirely in the dark.
This deep dive really matters because it challenges us to question the actual mechanics of how our sovereign tax dollars, our most sensitive national security data, and our long-term strategic advantages are being managed.
It's way bigger than just one bill.
It is. It forces us to look past the surface-level partisan bickering and examine the systemic architecture of legislation like the NDAA.
Yeah.
The concerns raised here regarding the irreversible nature of supply chain entanglement and the deliberate opacity of Pentagon funding present a stark warning about the costs of permanent global alliances.
It demands that we look a little closer, right? Like, we need to read the fine print of the bills passing through Congress and recognize when our attention is being actively diverted.
Absolutely. And this raises an important question, and it's something I want to leave you, the listener, to mull over today.
Okay, let's hear it.
We've seen how a legislative maneuver with potentially profound, irreversible implications for national defense and global sovereignty can be effectively buried beneath algorithmic noise.
Completely buried.
So if major structural changes to the way our government operates are happening right in front of us without us seeing them, what other permanent shifts in global power, the economy, or your personal privacy are being codified into law right now, entirely unseen, just waiting for the history books to notice?
Like, share, and subscribe to PoliticallyX.